Hello, it's Mr. Bush here, and today we're going to be going over continental drift and basically the crustal features that are formed from colliding plate boundaries. So let's go ahead and get started with continental drift. It's a theory that all the continents were once connected in this massive supercontinent called Pangaea, and over time they basically drifted apart. And the convection currents inside the mantle are what provided the force to move them apart. So let's go ahead and look at those real quick. Now, a convection current basically occurs when an object heats up, making it less dense, causing it to rise. And then once it rises away from the heat source, it cools and sinks back down. And you kind of get the circular pattern. If y'all remember, whenever we boiled the water with paper chips in it, the circular patterns were those convection currents where the hot water rose, cooled, and then came back around. Now this is going to pull on the plate slightly, causing them to move. So like this plate would basically start to move here, this plate would move the opposite direction, and over time the continents start to drift apart. Now if you remember, our formula is force is equal to mass times acceleration. Well, because the mass is really big, our acceleration of our continents is very small, meaning they accelerate at maybe about 2 to 3 inches a year. So this whole process of them pulling apart probably took about 400 million years. Let's go ahead and look at that supercontinent Pangaea. Alright, now the first person who came up with the theory of continental drift, basically no one really believed him, because it didn't really seem to make sense. Like if you came up there and said, hey, all our continents were once connected, but they've drifted apart, they're going to ask, well, how do you know this? Like, why would they just drift apart? And he actually came up with some really good pieces of evidence. Now, the first one is going to be that the continents fit together kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. Alright, now the first piece of evidence is basically going to be the shape of the continents. If y'all look here, and sorry about the green, it didn't really show up very well, but if you look here, Africa and South America fit together kind of like a puzzle piece. So does the north part of Africa and North America. Our little part over here with, Greenland, Eurasia, that whole area, they also fit together. And Antarctica and India would have fit basically down here together right next to Australia. Now, the second piece of evidence is basically going to be our rock structure. And we'll go ahead and pull up a different picture for that. Alright, and basically what this means is the rock layers, from let's say like the rocks in this area here, they would match up. So like the rocks off of the west coast of, the east coast of South America would match up with the rocks of the west coast of Africa. And the rocks over here of East Africa match up with the rocks of India and Antarctica. Same thing for Antarctica and Australia. They match up. If you look at the top half, that's not shown here, North America, Greenland, and parts of Europe would all have the same types of rock. Another thing they found was the fossil records kind of matched up that all of these were once connected. And let's go ahead and look at that real quick. Alright, now these fossils are basically found in the patterns that the picture indicates. These animals here that could not swim were found across South America and Africa. This animal also could not swim, was found across Africa, India, and Antarctica. And the same thing for this tropical plant with these very large leaves were found all the way across South America, Africa, Antarctica, and Australia, indicating two things. First off, all these continents were once connected. The other thing it indicates is Antarctica had to be warmer. And the only way it could have been warmer is if it was closer to the center of the Earth, closer to the equator. Which means Antarctica literally had to drift further away. Alright, let's go ahead and look at how basically the landforms that are created whenever these continents move or these plates are moved by the mantle. Where two of these large plates meet is called a plate boundary. And there are three major types: diverging, converging, and transforming. Basically, diverging is where they pull apart, kind of like the word means in English. To diverge means to separate. Converging is when they push together, and also like the word in English means to come together. Transforming moves sideways of each other. Let's go ahead and look at some of the structures each one of these makes. Alright, when the diverging plate is in the ocean, so this is going to be two ocean plates and they're diverging, it'll basically create a mid-ocean ridge. This is kind of like a small mountain range underneath the ocean's water. It'll also create seafloor spreading because these two plates are going to pull apart from each other, and when they do, the seafloor will literally spread apart, and then lava can come up there and create new seafloor. The oldest rocks are going to be out towards, like basically right over here towards the edge. The newest rock is going to be right in here where the lava came up and formed new rock. Let's go ahead and look at whenever two continental plates diverge.